Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, founder of Mental Heal, author of Man Just Express Himself. Listen, I just want to tell you guys thank you so much for the love that you continue to show me on the movement, the book, and of course now this new YouTube channel. You guys definitely did your thing with liking, sharing, subscribing. Make sure you continue to do that. I definitely appreciate you. I didn't anticipate it to grow as rapidly as it did, but we are here. So with that being said, I will be introducing a new segment that I'll be interviewing different men throughout the community as well as in different places. And I wanted to do this so you guys can not only just hear my voice and the lessons that I provide for you guys on different knowledge and subject, but I thought it would be an interesting way for other men to tell their story of resilience and their road to their wellness journey. So we're going to be talking in these interviews about mental health, physical health, relationships, substance use recovery, early detection, different societal norms, relationships, athletes and mental health, maybe politics and mental health, and the stressors that's coming from that. And also masculinity. We might dive into that as well. So it's so many amazing men who have reached out that are open to tell their story. So, I'm gonna put something together, man. One Tuesday out of the month. I think it'll be interesting for you guys to hear that dynamic. So be willing and open to listen. I hope you guys continue to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you do that. Make sure you also get the book. Go support. With that being said, the guest that I got coming up is
Hello to everybody. I'm Brian Keith Harris II, educator, author, minister, motivational speaker. Have been in education for 16 years, with 9 of those years as a school administrator. I work at an all boys tuition free Episcopal school in Washington, D.C. I am the founder of Sons of Freedom Dance Institute, which is an organization that teaches social emotional learning to Black and Brown boys through classical and contemporary forms of dance and movement. And I'm the author of 2 books, Freedom's Design, 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings, and the children's book, I Am My History.
Man, that's a heck of a resume, man. I didn't expect anything less, being that you're Harris. No relation, we was connected through social media. So either way,
Yeah.
it's a good thing, man. I'm happy to hear all the wonderful things that you're doing. So when we talk about education, here children about to go back to school, coming up off a pandemic. Some of them will still be virtual. Some of them are going back to like on campus learning. What's your thoughts on that? Any tips that the students can do and the parents can obtain from that learning environment?
Yeah, I think that the tips that I would offer perhaps could be tips that any school system could use. I think that it is something to be said about looking at specific schools and knowing what those specific schools need in order for them to be successful for the fall. But if I could offer tips to schools, I think there are different buckets, right? There are tips to offer to school leaders, tips to offer to teachers, to students, and to families. But I think if I were to sum it up, I think the most important tip is to really focus on and center on that aspect of social emotional learning, that aspect of healing and wholeness. I think the pandemic, in a real sense, unearthed some of the brokenness that exists in the education system. I think that it unearthed some of the disparities in the education system, specifically with BIPOC children and families and the community. And I think that it's important that schools really focus on making sure that at the center of their work is making sure that our students have those social emotional skills in order for them to be successful in life, because it's those skills that students will need in order for them to have successful academic outcomes. So I think that would be the tip that I would offer, to really focus on and to center the work on social emotional learning, healing, and wholeness.
No, I'm with you. And for the people out there who don't know or probably can put into context what you mean by the social emotional learning piece, can you break that down a little bit for us?
Sure. So, social emotional learning is the way in which we manage our own emotions, the way in which we see ourselves, the way in which we go about making decisions, the way in which we even enter into relationships with others, and then also our level of social awareness and consciousness. And so there are traditionally 5 pillars of social emotional learning. Those pillars are self-awareness. Those pillars are self-regulation. Those pillars are social awareness, decision-making, and then relationship skills. All of those things can really be looked at as the essential tools or tips, that every person, children and adults, need in order for them to be successful. We all need to have a level of healthy awareness of ourselves. We need to be in tune with ourselves, with our emotions, with our reactions, with the things that are happening in our lives. We all need to develop self-regulation or management. We need to be able to know how to regulate our emotions, how to regulate those, circumstances that are not favorable. We definitely need to be socially aware of the things that are happening around us and how it is that we should and can respond. And then we need to make good decisions. I think it's never too early to help students to make good decisions and to really make sure that we're building out their capacity to make good decisions. And then last, we're always going to be working with other people. And so it's important for us to learn what those relationship skills are, so that we can be successful in life. So that's kind of a breakdown of, what social emotional learning is all about.
No, that's understood, and you gave a good synopsis of it. And I want people to be able to just reach out to you if they have additional questions on that subject. But while we on that subject, to be honest with you, and you do work in the all male school setting, do you see a difference between our young men and women, young girls, as far as being more socially aware, as far as their emotions and everything, regulating their emotions, their feelings, the expression of those things?
I think that BIPOC children in general, Black and brown children in general, have a level of deficiency in the areas of social emotional learning. And those deficiencies are not because of the children. And in a real sense, they're not even because of the adults that raise them or even the teachers that teach them. It's oftentimes because of the school systems in which they're in, that do not focus on social emotional learning because they do not understand the connection between a healthy self, and those successful outcomes that we want students to see and have. As it relates to, do I see there being differences, or are there differences among Black and brown boys versus Black and brown girls? Absolutely. I think that one of the major things that plagues Black and brown boys is the phenomenon of toxic masculinity. There is an unofficial code, that exists in our culture that really gives the rules or the list or the blueprint for how it is that Black and brown boys and men should handle their emotions. And that oftentimes is very toxic. The ideals of toxic masculinity, where you can express your emotions, where you have to always be in control of situations, all of those types of things have come directly from what Dr. Joy DeGruy calls a post-traumatic slave syndrome. In other words, during the time of enslavement, Black and brown men, Black men, were unable to show their emotions, because showing your emotions was definitely a sign of weakness. You would be sold, right? Or tortured or harassed. And so as the years have gone by, and as our culture has evolved, those pieces of enslavement have not left us. And so now what we see is we see Black and brown boys and men who don't oftentimes know exactly how to express their emotions, and who do not believe that expressing their emotions is something that is to be celebrated, but rather it is something that should be shamed. And so I think one of the major things that we try to do at our school is make sure that we give our boys a platform and a space to express themselves freely, to cry if they need to be excited if they need to express joy if they need to, because we recognize that when our children have emotional intelligence, when our children have a healthy emotional life and journey, that they'll become better people. They'll become less destructive to themselves and to others. So I do think that there's a difference. I think with young women, the image, the difference is in self-image, right? The difference is girls, black and brown girls oftentimes go against the ideals of society where they can't be too outspoken, right? Or they can't be um, too intelligent, or they can't be too ambitious, because it will be looked at as something negative. So I think that in a real sense shows that there are some differences among boys and girls. And I think that those are things that we have to address in schools.
So let me ask you this. So if a
Mhm.
young man is uh, transferring into your school from a public school setting or a different private school, and now they're in this environment to where the boys, his peers around him, is open and welcoming and expressive. Do have you ever been met with resistance by this new young man that's coming into this environment, or does he immediately adapt?
Yeah, I think every situation is different, right? So we've had young men who've come to the school who, have come from other settings, private or public, or some other kind of setting, and have had a difficult time initially really getting or understanding the culture of our school. And then we've had young men who've come to our school and have felt like, oh my God, this is what I've needed. They didn't articulate it as such, but you could see it in their behavior. So I think it just depends on, it has depended on, the type of young man and the environment from which he's coming.
Nah, those are interesting perspectives. I was just curious because, oftentimes, in most cases where I'm from, a lot of boys are often, displaced within the school setting. Like if they're,
Hmm.
you know, put out of certain schools or can't afford to go to a different school, or, rezoning happened, now they're migrated within this entire different setting with people that he have no knowledge of, just meeting. So I can imagine it can be an adjustment issue. So it's good to hear that case by case, but more than likely, those young men are able to adjust and adapt to those situations. So hopefully,
Hmm.
too, though, when they go to that home setting, it's the same welcoming and nurturing environment for their emotions. Because if not, it can be that battle, that conflict as well. So, um, have you ran into those encounters to where in school setting it's accepting and loving and nurturing, but at the home setting, of course, we know everything can't be peaches and cream because parents are working or single parent household or whatever the case is. So many different traumatic experiences can potentially happen and things like that. Have you guys had to encounter those situations?
Absolutely. We absolutely have situations where our families have not, in a real sense, made the mind shift or even the behavior shift to understand that our school is a school that champions the success of Black and brown boys in all ways and in all forms. And so we have to do a lot of work to not just heal our boys and offer our boys strategies to cope with their emotions, strategies to know or to have self-confidence, strategies to develop, positive relationships and good decision-making skills. But we also have to make sure that our families have that information and those skills and strategies as well. And so what we did was, at the beginning of the pandemic, we created a program that I actually lead, and it's our family engagement program. And this is all in an effort to make sure that our families have the tools that they need to, one, help their children academically, right? Because they've been at home. But then two, to make sure that they understand how to respond to their sons, how to raise their sons with a level of emotional intelligence so that it does not further traumatize their son, right? And so, we don't always get it perfect, right? And we oftentimes cannot parent the parents. But what we can do as schools is offer as much support to families as we can. What we can do is make sure that we change our practices or improve our teaching practices so that the boys become so different of people that in a real sense causes parents to look at their own practices at home and change their practices as a result of their son. And that's happened too, right? Like our boys have changed. Our boys come home, they're meditating or they're doing different things. And the parents are like, wait a minute, we don't do that here, you know? But then the parents jump on and sign on to those things. And so, you know, as scripture says, the child shall lead them. That's really true, right? If you equip the children with the tools that they need, they can very well lead their families to a more healthy or more whole place.
Listen, I definitely appreciate and can respect that wraparound support. You know, not
Right,
only with the student, but of course with the
right,
parent as well,
right.
because you know it's a collective effort, and a lot of times the administrative staff in different settings only think of that individual as if he or she doesn't have to go home and
That's right.
deal with another set of problems. So it's good to hear, man, that you guys are tackling every aspect and have thought of everything to implement, not only for the child, but of course for the family as well. So go ahead and shout your school out one more time, man. It sounds like a phenomenal program.
Yeah, so my school is the Bishop Walker School for Boys in Washington, D.C. Again, it's a tuition-free Episcopal school, kindergarten through fifth grade. The school is named after Bishop John T. Walker, who was the first African American bishop to the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. And prior to his death, he had the desire to really change the lives of Black and brown boys in Washington, D.C. And so he pulled together one of his very closest friends, Bishop Preston Hannibal, and his wife, Sandy Hannibal, and he tasked them with starting the school. And so the school has been in existence for 13 years. And then I want to say this too, because I don't want people to think like, oh, our school is perfect in every way, all right? The reality is that we are all works in progress, even all meaning all schools are works in progress. I think the difference with our school and some other schools is that we have made the conscious decision that we do not want our boys to not fulfill their dreams. We do not want our boys to never become the things that they were created to be. And so, because of that, we wake up every single morning with the intention of transforming lives. And I think that's really the only difference. It's not because we have, you know, some magic wand, you know, it's not because we have millions and millions of dollars. It's not because of even our donors, but it's really because of our staff who make a commitment every single day, you know, to improve the lives of Black and brown boys.
That's awesome. Do you guys plan to expand beyond the fifth grade?
We do. We do. We have aspirations of expanding beyond the fifth grade because, you know, really, to be honest with you, I believe that Black and brown boys specifically should kind of fifth and sixth grade should kind of fall into each other. And if they can stay in the same school, that'd be awesome. So we absolutely are thinking about and thinking through, you know, expanding grades, building grades, and really seeing how it is that we can follow the trajectory of our boys. My specific role as director of outplacement and graduate support is a role that was created to do just that, which is track our boys even after leaving our school and make sure that they continuously get the support that they need. You know, because the reality is that there are not other Black and brown boys schools, right? There are not many of them. You know, in DC, there are only 4 schools that are, you know, functioning and really supporting Black and brown boys. And so many of our boys go to schools where they're not going to see no one else like them again, right? Or they may see 1 or 2. And so they're thrusted into this culture. And so my role is really making sure that they still get that level of love, support, and nurturing that they need. And so, you know, we're definitely thinking about expanding and thinking about how we can continue to, you know, make a difference in the lives of our boys all the way up until they become men.
That's awesome, man. So I mean, I'm touching and agreeing with you guys that you guys
Yeah.
can, you know, get it extended to at least high school. You know, I want you
Yes.
guys to do that, man, because you know
Yes.
if that break in between that structural male only emotional supporting environment can be detrimental once they go to another setting, and then
Yeah.
you know, so hopefully you know you guys can still catch them and assist them with the things that they need. So appreciate the insight on the school, but let's get into these books, man. You got two phenomenal pieces of literature in which I got
Thank
in
you,
my
sir.
personal arsenal. Use them in therapy, recommend them to people and everything like that. So drop it on the
Right.
people what you got, man.
Yep. So have two books published, and we'll have two more books coming out very shortly. I'll talk a little bit about those two. My first book is Freedom's Design: 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings. And listen, I have to tell people this all the time. People, when authors talk, sometimes authors don't tell the truth. They give this whole like, I always wanted to have a book. It didn't start like that with me. Okay. So I just like to be authentic, real, and honest and open with people. I never planned on writing a book. At least not now, and at least not this type of book. Okay. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So I started a doctoral program at Wesley Theological Seminary. And my second class that I had was entitled Challenging the Tenacity of White Supremacy. And reading the book by Ibram Kendi, Stamped from the Beginning, I was just absolutely saddened by my work as an educator. My thoughts were, how am I going to help to change the lives of our children, knowing that many of these systems that continue to deprive them have been stamped from the beginning? And so on this particular day, my classmates went to lunch. I sat at my computer and I was like, I know that I have the dance company. I know that I've been able to help make a difference in the lives of boys, but I want to be able to just really empower other people, right? And so I wrote the first words of a poem, which was, I am my history, walking tall, standing in royalty. That one poem became 20 other poems that all focus on history and culture. Because I believe that, one, when we teach our children their rich history and cultural legacy, that they, in a real sense, are able to mend their soul and awaken their spirit. And so the book then became an empowerment book. And so each day it's a different poem, again, all centering around things that have happened in our past, things that are happening currently, and how it is that Black and brown boys grades 4 through 8 can really make a difference in their community, right? And so each day, not only is there a poem to read, but there's also a writing prompt that comes with it. And it's done really well. It's functioning in many different schools, many different mentoring programs. There are some other people like yourself that use it in some therapy sessions that they have with boys. And so that's how Freedom's Design was birthed. I Am My History, the children's book, was just birthed out of Freedom's Design, because reading that poem, there's so much vivid imagery. And the book is really for 4th through 8th grade boys. And so I said to myself, I want to be able to share this message with everyone, boys, girls, whomever. And so we just created the illustrations for I Am My History, and I Am My History was born. So that's kind of the roundabout way. But I think it's important sometimes for people to hear like the journey or the creation of your work, because one of the things that people should recognize is that when you're writing a book, it should come from a place of authenticity, and it should come from some work that you are grappling with, or some work that you feel is not happening in the world. And I just simply felt like our boys never get a chance to talk about the things that have happened in our history. Sometimes they don't even know the things that happened in our history, right? So that's the first problem, right? But then once they know about it, they don't have an opportunity to share how they feel. And then if they don't have an opportunity to share how they feel, they also can't make connections to what's happening. There's a poem in my book called Echoes from Emmett, and it's really the story of Emmett Till in poetry. And that poem is and remains the most powerful poem of the whole book. And boys are able to see how Emmett Till was killed and murdered, and how that same kind of thing is happening right now to Black and brown boys, just like Emmett Till, right? And so that book really was birthed out of my desire to create a platform for boys to share their thoughts and their feelings. And the two other books that I have coming up, one is a memoir, but it's a children's book. And it's the story of my life and my love for dance and movement. And then the other book is for educators, giving them the tools, the tips, and the strategies to incorporate mindfulness and social emotional learning in their daily instruction.
Hey, listen, the two books that I do have, how I introduced them into therapy was I don't know if you're familiar with narrative therapy, but it's pretty much
Yes.
having your clients illustrate strips of their life or where they are now.
Yes.
So that's pretty much what I did, you know. So it was a random day. One of my most challenging clients by societal views, right? You know, like he's good kid, just poor circumstances are beyond his control. But
Yeah.
reading the book, then illustrating how he will put himself in different positions, like it just was amazing. So I'm glad that those tools were able to be helpful, and I'm sure these next two will be as powerful as well. So when you plan on releasing those, how's that going?
Yeah. One, man, I just want to thank you for even introducing the book in that way. I always love to hear, and I'm always so humbled when I do hear how something that was dear in my heart is now also living in the lives of others. So thank you for that. So the book for teachers, entitled Mindfulness Matters 2.0, will be released this fall. And the book that is the memoir, called BJ's Dancing Feet, will be released sometime early spring of 2022.
Nice. So yeah, as soon as those drop, man, just let me know and I'll definitely plug them.
Sure.
And you're definitely welcome. But I definitely wanted to continue to. My plan is to continue to use them because I
Yes.
think it's important that we understand our history. You know,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
course it's a part of us, and then depending on where you are from an institutional standpoint or a systemic standpoint, you're not getting this information. So
That's
that's
right.
another reason why I incorporated it within my therapy because there's so many different black psychologists, black, pioneers in every aspect of life, but it's not
That's
really
right.
shared. So if you are a therapist out there, you want these tools, definitely go to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, it's a video on black psychology with so many different pioneers because we hear about those European ones, or
Right.
the ones of other descent, not necessarily black or within that ethnicity. So it's definitely important that we highlight those things. So how can people reach out to you? I'm sure they'll have questions or want to buy your book. Drop all that information.
Sure. So people can reach out to me via my website and also on social media platforms. Website, very simple. It's just briankeithharris.com. All social media platforms, Brian Keith Harris. I have something really big coming up. I will be hosting a workshop entitled The Heart and Soul of SEL, developing strategies to teach social emotional learning and daily instruction. And so every educator out there, every school leader, every school counselor, who want to really figure out how is it that educators in the context of their classroom can teach social emotional learning, come out to that conference. On my social media platform, there's a link in my bio. You can click on that link and it'll take you right to the Eventbrite to register. So yeah, briankeithharris.com, and then all forms of social media, Brian Keith Harris.
All right. So will this be recorded so people can come back later and look at it if they don't meet their deadline? You,
Unfortunately, the session will not be recorded, but we're looking to do the session again, perhaps in the winter. So just kind of, thinking through what that will look like, kind of want to get through this session first. And so we have been pushing and really promoting and making sure that everyone knows that this is so essential. I think it's essential because oftentimes what happens is that school systems say things like, we don't have the funding to develop or to have a social emotional curriculum at our school. And when they say that, then social emotional learning gets put on the back burner and our children continue to be ill equipped for life. And so this workshop is really an opportunity for teachers to learn strategies that they can incorporate in the context of their classroom, even when they don't have a social emotional curriculum in the traditional sense. And so this is something that I think is so important for teachers to come and be a part of, because, hey, we want to make sure that our children develop those skills. We want to make sure that they thrive in life. And these are the ways in which we do it, through teaching social emotional learning, through the practices of mindfulness. These are the ways that we really make sure that our children have an arsenal of tools that they can utilize for their lives, or to be successful in their lives.
And if people want to contribute to the school, how can they do that?
Yep. So if people want to contribute to our school, you can really go onto our website, bishopwalkerschool.org. There are all different platforms and all different ways in which to support our school and the work of our school. And so much of that information is also on my page too, Bishop Walker School for Boys. So yes, that definitely is always helpful. We started a new campaign a few months ago, the Juneteenth campaign, which is an effort to bring in Black and Brown donors to our school. And so people can definitely support the work of Bishop Walker School, and have me come to your school and do trainings as well. It's important for schools to say, hey, if you have the funding, like, we want to make sure the kids and teachers and families have all of this support in moving forward in the new school year.
Hey, that's awesome. Continue much success, my brother. I definitely appreciate you checking in. I guess it's a Harris thing, man. So keep up the good work. We definitely gonna rock. I'll catch you on the other side. Appreciate you.
All right, bro. Thank you. Take care, man. Peace.